NBA legend Julius Erving, who didn't mince words on the Inside the Green Room podcast with Danny Green when discussing the current super team in Brooklyn. He said, quote, "It's reminiscent of how the Yankees used to do it all the time. They load up, they call it buying a championship. The Lakers are known for doing that too. They're getting all these pieces. They don't know at the end of the season what it's going to look like or what it's going to feel like, but they're going to be formidable. You've got a team with 6 former All-Stars and 3 All-NBA guys who have been there and succeeded in the playoffs." Stephen A., are Dr. J's comments fair or foul?
I kind of think they're foul, believe it or not. I don't necessarily agree with that. Number one, if you're going to say something like that, say it when LeBron did it and he went to Miami. Say it when LeBron and AD joined last year. I didn't hear Dr. J saying that then. Number two, here's why I don't compare it to the Yankees. You see, when it comes to Harden, Max, or when it comes to Kyrie, or when it comes to KD, as you have stated on many occasions, Max, they're going to get their money. They're going to get their money no matter who you play for. The money was those exact dollars was coming. Kyrie was going to get that max $141 million. KD was going to get his max. James Harden turned down the additional 2 years and $103 million from Houston. Okay, but when you bring up the Yankees, took the liberty, Max, of going back into my archives because you ain't the only diehard Yankee fan. I remember back in the day in 1975 when the Yankees paid Catfish Hunter over $3 million. How about when they paid Reggie? How about when they played Reggie Jackson, Max Kellerman? That was in 1977. Now he was worth it because they won back-to-back World Series, and we know who Mr. October is. But they gave Reggie over $3 million.
Catfish was worth it too.
That's right, he was absolutely. How about when they gave Dave Winfield $23 million? Remember that? How about when they did that? How about Bernie Williams and his $87.5 million? How about Mike Mussina in 2021 when he got $88.5 million? Of course, Derek Jeter, I don't even count that because he was your guy. You groomed him. You didn't trade for him or anything like that. But Alex Rodriguez, $275 million. I mean, that you picked that up once he signed up with the Rangers and came over to you, and then you gave him an additional $300 million. Let's not forget all of that. And so I look at it from now. Actually, it was $250 from Texas, and then they signed him. They got him from there, and then ultimately re-upped him for $275 million. So you got that going on. You picked up Giancarlo Stanton's contract.
I mean, CC Sabathia got like $160, $180. Teixeira.
I think CC Sabathia. What did he get? Like 160-something million. All I'm trying to say is this: It's not the same. It's not the same because those guys that the Yankees got, you can make a legitimate argument they were going to be hard pressed to get those dollars elsewhere. You literally bought them, okay? You overpaid in some instances to get them to wear pinstripes and come to the Bronx because you're the Yankees and you were a cash cow and you could afford what most teams couldn't. That's not how it is in the NBA. KD chose to go to Brooklyn. Anywhere else he would have gone, they would have given him the exact max dollars that the Brooklyn Nets gave him. And so I look at it from that perspective, and I would say the great Dr. J. Julius Erving, who I love dearly, I don't think he's right on this particular equation in terms of comparing the two. I don't think there's a comparison there.
I mean, yeah, I was just looking at there's a bunch of contracts. First of all, Bernie Williams was also their own guy, and he could have gotten more money on the open market. He called Steinbrenner last minute and said, I don't want to be a Red Sox. I want to be a Yankee. Yeah. Let me say this about Dr. J's comments. First of all, they're fair. And second of all, I'd take it as a compliment if I was the Brooklyn Nets. Do you understand there's there's a cap in basketball. So everyone can spend the same, right? So how do you buy a championship? Your team has to be attractive enough that the superstars want to play there. You can't even say, well, they have New York because the Knicks have New York and they couldn't give away their money. No one would take it. So the Nets are doing something extra right to have this situation going on right now. That's a tip of the cap. It's not only fair for Dr. J to say it, it's an enormous compliment. By the way, it's a compliment to the Yankees, too. They're not buying a second-round playoff exit. They're trying to buy a championship. You should be doing everything you can to get a championship. Dr. J didn't start out with the New York Nets. He started out with the Virginia Squires, right? and then he gets to the Nets, and then he gets he becomes eligible for the NBA and winds up with the Sixers. This is a business. But putting that aside, where major markets will use their resources to get great players, even if they have to spend a lot of money, that's not what the Nets did. The Nets have the same cap that the Pacers and that everyone else has. The Nets are in the same market as the Knicks. They were the ones who wound up with KD and Kyrie and James Harden, and now everyone wants to play for them. That's just a tip of the cap to a great organization. Buying a championship, I'm with Dr. J. It's fair and it's a compliment.
Yeah. I just don't view them as buying a championship. That's all I'm trying to say. Because when you buying, it's implying that you got something else that somebody else couldn't get because you had more money than they did. And that's not the case in the NBA. Yeah. You have guys, 2 free agents, and Kyrie and KD that elected to go there. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's not like the Spurs. A team like the Spurs, everyone who they win a championship with, they draft. Right? Like that, I get it. And it feels good as a fan of the team when you draft the players because it's like you get to see them come up. They're an organic part of the team and everything. But throughout sports history, there have been major trades and free agent signings, and those championships count just the same. And by the way, Philly won a championship with Dr. J. He ain't giving that back. They had to pay him a lot of money to win that championship, along with Moses Malone, who they brought in. Moses Malone was the best. Apologies to Bird and Magic and Kareem. But back then, for a couple years, Moses Malone was the best player in the NBA. He wasn't drafted by the Sixers, and Dr. J won a championship with him. KD is an interesting guy, man. This is not KD years ago in OKC when he said, hey, there are more important things in life than rings. And that sounded like excuses back then. And, of course, we all you imagine MJ or Kobe saying something like that. These guys were killers. And even then I thought, but you know what? KD is different. He's an interesting dude, always has been. He's not just parroting what everyone else says. Stephen A., I talk about, and we've talked about how he seems to have thin skin, burner accounts on social media and getting into spats with celebrities and stuff like that, literally saying he's going to spit on Michael Rappaport. But I said in a way, I've come to think of him in a way of why do you care what anyone thinks? Well, it seems like he respects people. It doesn't matter if you have a blue check mark by your social media or not. He gets into it with fans because they're people. And he respects people's, what they have to say, maybe too much in a way. So he's just an interesting guy. I think what he's saying here is not what he said years ago when it sounded to me like, it sounds a little bit like an excuse because you don't think you're going to win a championship. This sounds to me like something you might like even less, Stephen A. Trust the process. This dude is about process right now. I respect that. He's already got his championships. Now, I don't love the way he got them. He reverse engineered his greatness in terms of what a championship is supposed to mean because he joined a 73-win team that could not lose without him. Or even you don't even need KD to join that Warriors team to win. They could have just had a normal all-star join that team. They couldn't have lost. It was KD, right? No, but now he's got the championships. He's got the rings. It's almost like, okay, media and fans and everybody, I need these rings. Okay, I got those now. Now I want to get to what I think is important, which is his own development as a player. Now, I'm quite sure he believes that if he's advancing as a player and he has these guys with him, that he will win a championship. But to me, the way I hear this is I'm not focused on the result. I'm focused on the process. And that is, look, he's over 30 years old now. He's been around the world a million times, right? He's seen it all. He's talked to all different kinds of people and is reflecting the kind of wisdom, I think, here that comes with age and that kind of worldly experience. He's thinking about the process, what's in front of him, what he has to do right now. The results will come. I have no problem with this remark. And furthermore, I'm buying it.
Well, I don't have a problem with it either. I just don't believe it totally. I mean, the reality of the situation is you came to Brooklyn, New York. You passed up on going to the Knicks at Madison Square Garden. You're in the media capital of the world because Brooklyn is one of the 5 boroughs. We understand what it represents. You don't win the championship this year. If y'all are healthy and y'all are on the court and you don't win the chip this year, they ain't going to live it down. I can assure you of that. Times are going to be hard. You got media members watching them and stuff like that. People talk about them being a bit truculent and acerbic, unnecessarily so. Just bad attitudes, particularly when it comes to 2 of their 3 stars. James Harden is considered a person to be on his best behavior, and he's been a pleasure to deal with for the most part if you talk to some people. But certainly that hasn't been the case with KD and Kyrie. Not that they care, nor should they. But in the end, here's the bottom line. You got to close. You got to close the deal. And if you're healthy and on the court together and you don't win, I assure you, walking the streets of New York City won't be too damn easy for you. You can't walk around with an attitude like, this is about the process and it ain't about winning a chip. Not with this bomb squad you've assembled. Max Kellerman, you're on the record. This might be the greatest offense ever assembled. That's what you said.
Oh,
you
it is.
Can't,
it's going to be.
You can't. Well, I'm not. Again, we're not disputing it. You cannot have those kind of superlatives or those compliments aimed in your direction, and you don't close the deal. You can't. Not New York. You can get away with that in Oklahoma City. You can get away with that in Oklahoma City. You can get away with that maybe in San Francisco, not Oakland. Maybe in San Francisco. You cannot get away with that in Brooklyn, New York.
No.
I don't give a damn if it was Staten Island. You can't get away with nothing like that in New York. Excuse the
Brooklyn,
the grammatical
that's
incorrectness.
True.
You can't, the double negative, you can't get away with nothing like that. Not in Brooklyn.
That's
hell
right.
no.
No, you can't get away with
Hell
nothing
no.
like that. The double negative is absolutely correct there. That's right. You can't get away with nothing like that in Brooklyn.
That's right.
Brooklyn's been waiting for a championship since the Dodgers left town in 1957. The last championship they got was 1955. And New York hasn't won a championship since 1973 in basketball. You're right about that. I don't think that's what KD is saying. I think he's on a different, his thinking has evolved. He's like, I think he believes that they will win the championship. That if he trusts the process, they will. I'm not saying, I don't think he's making excuses. He's like, look, this is where I am. I'm just trying, I've already won a championship. I'm just trying to get better. Could you imagine if KD, James Harden, and Kyrie